Alright, so what you should have now is you should have an object enemy that moves vertical and another one that moves horizontal. I've called mine object enemy V and object enemy H. I'm not going to go into the code for those. It should be pretty straightforward what you have to do. Okay, obviously the vertical one's moving on the Y, the horizontal one's moving on the X, and you change it to left and right instead of up and down. What we are going to do this time round is make our game so that it works like this. And I've zoomed in on it a bit, so I've set up a view that focuses on the player there. And I can move around my maze, which I've changed a little bit. You can see there's some that are going horizontal. And up in the top left corner, I put a health bar. You can see that I can destroy those. And if I find one, if I touch it, you see that health bar is going down. Now, what I've done is I'll just make it so that I can lose the game here. Okay, when it gets into the negative, at the moment, all I've done is just make it say game over down here. So I'm going to show you how to use this console down here to debug the program. Say you want to test something, but you don't want to go to the effort of programming the whole thing without knowing that it works yet. We can actually use this console down here to throw some messages out. So what I've done, first of all, is set up the room. So I've got my room set up, and I've got my player object, and I've just thrown it in the center here. And I've got some of these are random. So this one is object enemy V, you can see down the bottom, but this one's a horizontal one. And I'd probably want to think about their placement a little bit more, but this is fine at the moment. And then at the top here, on the tab on the left, I go views. And this here, what I need to do is click enable the use of views, make sure that's clicked, set it to view 0, and tick visible when room starts. Now, down the bottom, I want to change it to object following, object player. And this here, I might change this to 64 by 64 just to show you the difference between what it does. Now, yours won't work at the moment because there's one other thing we need to set up. But there's like a buffer around the player. And at the moment, that buffer is set to 64 pixels. So you'll see that I can move around this area freely until I get to that 64 pixel buffer on the side of the screen where it starts to move a little bit more. Now, I don't really like that. I like it so that it kind of moves with the player. So that's why I had it set to 128 before and 128. Now, the view in the room here, this is the part that is the important bit. And the other thing is down here. So what I do is I click on here. I click get rid of that grid. Okay, so this is the size of the view in the room. And the way I did this was I said the port on the screen is going to be 1024 by 768. So that's how big it's going to show up in the window. But how much of the screen do I want to actually show? I only want it to show 256 across by 192. Now, I could make that a little bit bigger, so I just used a calculator for this. So I went start and then calc, and I can bring this up here. So 1024 divided by 4, that's what I did to get 256 across. And then I did 768 divided by 4, okay, 192. So that keeps it in proportion. But there's other ways I can do it. So I could go 102. Why does that not work? 1024. If I go divided by 3, well, that's not going to work. 341, like that. So I want to keep it in like a 4 by 3 pattern, if that makes sense. Okay, so 256 by 192. It's 4 by 3, that's what it is. So this here is actually 4 times 256, and this is 3 times 256 down there. So I can make some changes here. I can modify this a little bit, as long as I've got it in the 4 by 3 range, but I'll just leave it for this now, and I won't worry about explaining that too much. Now on my object player, however, I have to add a few more things. So in my create variable, I have done a few things here to set some stuff up. Okay, I've put in a size equals sprite and width. And I'll probably use these later. Okay, I haven't really used them at the moment, so size equals sprite underscore width. That way, if I change the size of my sprite, I don't have to worry about utilizing these values later or typing in really complex things later on. I'll probably end up using them later with when we put sprites on it. So size equals sprite underscore width, and offset equals size divided by 2. Now I may use these later, and if I use them later, I'll explain them then. In here, I've added in 2 collision events. Okay, one with object enemy underscore H, one with object enemy underscore V. And I just made one of these and duplicated it. And on here, I've got execute a piece of code. And I'll call this reduce player health. All it is, it says player health minus equals 1. Okay, and the same with this one here. Reduce player health. So every time the player touches one of those enemies, they lose 1 health. Of course, they start with 100. So if I want to make it quicker, like a quicker death, then I can turn that down. However, I may need to change some stuff later on in this draw GUI bit. So if I go to the draw GUI bit, in here, I've executed a piece of code. I have said draw underscore set underscore color brackets C red. So this is a function that sets the draw color for the whole screen. And since I'm going to draw a rectangle next, that's going to be my health bar, I'm going to set this to C underscore red. Okay, I think I can use an RGB color, but I'm not too sure. So let's see, 00FF00. No, maybe not. I'll have to check. RGB. I'll just use C red now, and let's look up RGB colors. RGB. Nope. Draw set color. Doesn't look like I can use an RGB color at the moment. I know there is a way to do it, but for now, I'll just use this here. So draw set color C underscore red. And this function here, if you look down the bottom, it uses, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 arguments. And the first argument is the top left X position of the rectangle, and the second one is the top left Y position. Now there is a difference between draw and draw GUI. Draw GUI uses the viewport as your coordinate system. So that way I don't have to worry about changing the coordinates of these X things. It's not going to use the coordinates of the room. It's just going to use the coordinates of my viewport. And this is really really great addition to GameMaker Studio. So 50 pixels from the top left and 50 pixels down, that's going to be the top left of my rectangle. Then I'm going to go 50 plus player health. That's going to be the bottom right of my rectangle. And then 70 down. That's on the Y. That's going to be the bottom of my rectangle. So what's going to happen if we imagine that this window is a health bar, and this is 50-50, and then this is like, we could say player health across and 70 down. Now, as player health decreases, this is going to come in like this and keep going all the way down until it gets down to 0. Then it will start going to the negatives and we have to have a check. This false means I don't want it to have an outline. I want it to be solid. All right. So in here, I've got reduce player health minus equals 1. So that's all fine. And in the step event, I've added another script called life control. And life control. If the player health is less than or equal to 0, then I want it to be game over. Now, I'll put the game over code in here at another time. Instead, what I'm going to do is just make sure that it works by showing a debug message. So show underscore debug underscore message. And this is a special function that takes one single argument. And the argument it says it takes is a string down here. And so a string is always in quotation marks. And it's just a text message that you want to send to the console, which is this part down here. And so I could say game over, health is below 0. Health is at 0 or below. Doesn't matter if it's -1 or whatever. And now when I play the game and test it out, you can see that all of that does work. Okay, so as I travel with that, it gets down to there, and then it says health is at 0 below. Now, I haven't stopped it doing that at the moment, and that's something to work on later on. Now, what I am going to do is change this here. Now, I want you to see something. If I change this to player health equals 10, this is probably a bit better. But you'll see the health bar is really, really tiny. Okay, it gives me a bit more, I guess, complexity to the game because it's not as easy. And then it says I get hit by 2 things or so. If I change this to 20, what I need to do in here is add a multiplier onto this. Okay, if I say the 100 width was pretty good, then the health is at 20. If I multiply this by 5, then the starting value is going to be back to where it was at 100, and it's going to be reduced. Now, I might actually multiply it by 10, okay, to give myself a good health bar. Okay, and that goes out there. That's a good size health bar. It goes down pretty quick, which is good. It's a much better visual representation, so I can get hit by that. It goes down, health is at 0 or below. So that's working a lot better. Now, what I would like you to do as a challenge is to draw a heart sprite, just a simple heart, and then on the GUI, just here, draw a sprite. You can draw sprite like that and give it an XY position and draw it in front of the health rectangle. So pretty much, or it's going to give me an error, but I'll just stop that from running. So draw a sprite, figure out how to draw a sprite, look it up in the health, not in the health, in the help menu, and draw a heart just here. So it's part of the GUI system. Draw a little heart there, maybe 16 by 16, maybe 32 by 32, whatever size you think is a good size. And draw that up there just in front of the player heart. Take a screenshot of your code for that. Maybe your code and the game working as well, so I can see that it's working. So if you position things like this here, move that to there, or even over to there, put the code there, bring that up, take a screenshot of that, and upload that.